Good morning, Powell Church. Welcome home. My name is Tiana Black. I'm blessed and honored to be one of our pastors here at Powell Church. I want to give just a shout out, a word of thanks for you all allowing us space to share about our trip to Guatemala last week. We were very thankful to be able to do that. If you missed it, go take a listen on one of your podcast streaming, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and then come find one of us, and we'd be happy to show you some of our pictures from our trip. Today we are wrapping up our sermon series, Top 5, where we have been looking at the top 5 passages that people search. It's a survey that Bible Gateway did, and we're asking ourselves the question, why am I seeking this out? Why are we seeking this out? What are we in need of as we are looking at these verses? And as you saw in the bumper, we are on number 1, Psalm 23. Let's take a look at the psalm first, and then we will jump right on in. We're going to be looking at the New American Standard Bible version of this psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and loving kindness will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now, aside from the fact that this is, the psalm is number 1 on our list, this poetic gem is probably the most well-known, most well-loved of all of the psalms. Its versatile language can be applicable in literally any life situation. It has literally appeared in a plethora of literature and arts worldwide. It has been recited at funerals, at many deathbeds, and yet has also been woven into the big screen and many music lyrics as well. Yes, if you are wondering what movies with Clint Eastwood, John Wayne, and Katharine Hepburn have in common with hip-hop artist Coolio's famous song, Gangsta's Paradise, this is it right here, Psalm 23. He starts out saying, as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I take a look at my life and I realize there's nothing left. I promise that is the only words I know of that song. I don't know anything else. However, because of its familiarity, and as with many other well-known passages and narratives or gospel stories, we run into the danger of being insulated from being touched by the message held within it. In fact, Psalms is a book as a whole that I personally have a different encounter with different psalms, different verses, at different life situations, and based on my mood for the moment. Not all psalms are created equal at all moments in my life, because many of them give both a glimpse of the struggle along with the presence and promises of the Lord. And that gives me hope in the midst of my own struggle. Yes, that it coincides with the promises and the presence of the Lord, but even more so that there's a direct dialogue about realistic faith that speaks in the margins of true life experiences. In other words, I feel it's permission giving to sit in the depth of my pain and without denying the possibility of praise that is to come. In fact, it is almost a place where plenty of times that I just need to sit in the place of lament. I need to be in the place of my pain and sit in that for a moment without any expectation that everything is going to be okay. Which is why it's not surprising to me that actually the number 1 verse that Bible Gateway found was reported to have been searched was actually verse 4. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Yet again, we see the words spoken in affirmation of his presence and his comfort, but the writer is sharing of this need because of the journey through the valley of the shadow of death. Now, part of me wants to pause and say, well, wait a minute, this doesn't really belong here. this doesn't really fit. David was just talking about green pastures and still waters and paths of righteousness and this fluffy stuff. And then it goes into his restoration and guidance and provision. And now this dark note of evil and death come in. Doesn't really feel like it fits. However, in order for a psalm to be considered a song of trust, as this psalm is, it should include a reason to need it, a reason to trust, a reason to have need for a shepherd, a reason for comfort, an acknowledgement for the presence of evil, of danger, and of death. Why are we seeking this out? Why is this so well known and most beloved of Psalms, the most beloved of verses right here as being searched out of the Bible? And I think it's because we've lived it. We've walked in the valley together and by ourselves because we have been, we will be, or maybe you are right now walking in the valley of the shadow of death ourselves. We know the abrupt shift that can happen from being in the stillness and quiet waters to in his divine presence, and then all of a sudden being in a low, dark moment of our lives. In the words of Henry Ward Beecher, a clergyman and social reformer in the 1800s, he said that Psalm 23 has charmed more griefs to rest than all the philosophy of the world. It has remanded to their dungeon more felon thoughts, more black doubts, more thieving sorrows than there are sands in the seashore. It has comforted the noble hosts of the poor. It has sung courage to the army of the disappointed. It has poured balm and consolation into the heart of the sick, of captives in dungeons, of widows in their pinching griefs, of orphans in their loneliness. Dying soldiers have died easier as it was read to them. Ghastly hospitals have been illuminated. It has visited the prisoner and broken his chains, and it has made the dying Christian slave freer than his master. Friends, from the time of the fall in the Garden of Eden until Jesus returns and restores this world, trouble will be in our midst. It will be a part of life. Or as Jesus put it in Matthew 5:45, for he causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends the rain to the righteous and the unrighteous alike. In other words, no one is safe from encountering heartbreak. However, the true setting of this psalm is the space of being in the presence of something that is terrifying, which all of us will encounter at some point or another, and a place of the Lord's presence, the place that the Lord can also be found. There are three things that I want to highlight as we observe this space of walking through the valley of the shadow of death and the presence of the Lord. First, I don't know what your darkest valley may be or what you might be walking through right now, but I want you to know that it's not necessarily because of some sin in your life. Sometimes it is. Sometimes the repercussions of the darkest valleys are because of some bad decision we may have made, and we didn't walk the path of righteousness, and now we suffer the consequences. But that doesn't mean that every time we face adversity in life, it's because we have sinned. Remember that Jesus said God reigns on the just and unjust alike. Whatever valley you're in, my beloved, remember that you're not exempt because of your faith in Jesus Christ. And not everything is a form of punishment. Second, however, the second highlight is that whatever you're going through, God can and will use it for his good if we simply allow him to. Remember that salvation for our souls could not be won without Jesus' death on the cross. There are many things that we may encounter that feed into a greater purpose, and the valleys that we walk through have glory on the other side of the journey. In the words of James, consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let that endurance have its perfect result so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. Lacking in nothing. Brings us back to Psalm 23 and how it begins. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I lack nothing. So the third highlight, whatever you're going through, God will not let you face it alone. Jesus proclaims this in the very last words that he gives in Matthew's gospel. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Even though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, it is a troublesome and heavy. Psalm 23 is this proclamation that we don't go at it alone. In the words of a great writer, W.T. Purkiser, God does not offer us a way out of testings in life. He offers us a way through them, and that makes all the difference. As we read this psalm, David knew that even as we sit in his provision, his restoration, leadership, and guidance, we may still walk through the darkest of valleys, but we do so with the God who makes himself known in a personal way. He does not deal with humanity anonymously, but willingly invites us into the fold, into knowing his divine name of Yahweh, the God that created the universe, that made the heavens and the earth, the sea and the dry land, that shepherded Israel out of bondage in Egypt, also cares and nurtures and shepherds the individual, shepherds you and me, and he makes himself known in an intimate way. Now notice how David relates this in this psalm. It isn't in the green pastures or the paths of righteousness or the still waters that trust is established. It's in the crisis that trust is established. It's in the crisis that it generates this word of confidence in Yahweh. When we have this understanding, as David did, the danger and the evil and the crisis are part of the life of faith that we walk in, then we truly begin to understand that danger, evil, and crises that we encounter can temper our faith and our trust in Yahweh matures. And we pay special attention to the words that David chooses in this as well. First, he says that we walk through the valley. We don't walk in the valley. There's no need to quicken our pace. There's no need to be alarmed or to rush through it or panic in the midst of darkness, because the darkness is not our destination. We're not staying in it, we're walking through it. Our destination is mentioned in verse 6, that we will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This is only a season we are in. Second, David says, I will fear no evil. That does not mean that evil is not present. Just with God's presence, we need not fear it. I love this quote from Katharine Hepburn, the movie I mentioned earlier. She is reciting Psalm 23 in this moment that she's encountering adversity. She says, I do not fear a skunk. I simply do not care for its odor. We can be at a place of in presence of evil, but we need not fear it. Third, it's not death itself that we are walking through, but the shadow of death. I remember when my boys were little, at some point, every one of them, when they could discovered their shadow as they walked, they were afraid of it. They were scared and tried to run away from it. Now we know that is nonsense. We know that a shadow cannot cause harm. The shadow of a sword cannot pierce us, nor can a shadow of a dog bite us. If anything, the presence of a shadow teaches us one thing, that light is present. My beloved, if you are walking in the darkest of valleys and you are in the shadow, know that there is light that is present around you. Lastly, in the beginning of the psalm, he is speaking about God. He makes me lie down. He leads me beside still waters. He guides me. And in the midst of the dark valley, that the language now shifts from talking about God to talking to God. For you are with me. You set a table before me. You anoint my head with oil. Sometimes we're so busy talking about God when we need to just talk to God, and maybe it'll shift our focus in that moment. So why are we seeking this out? What are we in need of? As this is the verse that really has captivated the world's attention as we see in this survey. We see the relationship of this psalm as a whole with our attention on verse 4. Teaches us that the mindset of the things of the Lord pale in comparison to his active participation in our lives, especially when we face the darkness and the seasons that are before us. As David makes clear, Yahweh is not an abstract concept. He's not an imaginary friend, but is the living God who was and is and it will always be. Not only invites us into this relationship with him, but gives his presence and comfort as we face adversity. And at the same time, giving us opportunities for rest and restoration in his goodness and a dwelling place with him forever. I don't know, again, what valleys you've walked through or maybe what you're walking through right now. But my prayer is that you would know that you are not alone. Not only is the presence of the Lord with you as we read in this psalm, but this survey shows that the world is with you. The world is seeking out this word of comfort and to know that they are not alone. The world is seeking hope in the midst of their valley of the shadow of death, and we need not fear. For the God of the universe sees and hears and is present with you. We sometimes just need to shift our eyes from talking about God to talking to God. As I was preparing for this message, I came across that list of movies and Gangsta's Paradise, as I mentioned earlier, that included Psalm 23 with them. And I made sure to go and watch the clip so I could see what the context was and how it was used in that moment. And the moment that Clint Eastwood's Pale Rider that includes this is a little girl named Megan Wheeler. Megan Wheeler speaks this prayer after a group of thugs kill her dog when they terrorize the mining camp where she lives with her mother. And this version, that is her version in Psalm 23, struck my heart as what probably most of us feel like when we're in that pit, when we're in that place of pain, when we're needing to feel, to hear a word of confidence as we walk through our valley. And I thought we would close reflecting upon this little girl's plea, this little girl's moment where she is walking in the valley in her young little life. So as you take a posture of prayer with me, I want you to hear these words as permission to feel the weight of the valley. Speak these words to your weary heart. And if you're on the other side of your valley, tuck them into a space for when you may need them later on, for yourself or even to share with another. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want, but I do want. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. But they killed my dog. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, but I am afraid. For thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me, but we need a miracle. Thy loving kindness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, if you exist. And I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. But I'd like to get more out of this life first. If you don't help us, we're all going to die. Please, just one miracle. Yahweh, Creator God, personal God, help us as we walk through the valley of the shadow of death to fear no evil and to know that you are present with us. Affirm our faith in trusting you in the midst of crisis. And give us the confidence of Christ that we have our final dwelling place with you forever. Thank you for the moments of rest that you give, the leadership and guidance you offer, and the goodness and loving kindness that follows us all the days of our lives, especially the days we are so deep in the darkness that we fail to see it. Help us, we pray, to simply be in the posture of listening and receiving your word as a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. We love you, Lord. Thank you for loving us first. For it's in your Son's holy and precious name we pray. Amen.